This film is about a tiny bee with spectacular behavior, living in a nest that is more complex than that of the honeybee. Tetragonisca angustula is a small species of the large group of fascinating stingless bees. Stingless bees, Meliponinae or meliponids, occur exclusively in the tropics. Their greatest diversity is in tropical Central and South America, continents where the honeybees, the other group of highly social bees, originally did not occur. Because of their abundance, they are important pollinators. All of the hundreds of meliponid species have highly complex social behavior. Knowledge about this behavior has remained unknown for a relative long time. This is probably due to the fact that, in addition to their tropical occurrence, the nests are always built in well-protecting cavities. The Japanese biologist Sakagami was the first who systematically investigated the nest biology. He used details of the behavior, for example, types of comb building and striking interactions between queen and workers, to improve the classification within the group. Taxonomically, meliponids are related to honeybees and bumblebees. All these transport flower-collected pollen in characteristic pollen baskets on the hind legs. All other species of bees carry pollen to their nest in other ways. This tiny stingless bee occurs widespread in the tropics of Central and South America and can be common in areas where also other species of stingless bees occur. For example, it is one of the 64 meliponid species in the country of Costa Rica, where it is called Mariola or Mariquita. In this film, we will focus particularly on the behavior inside the nest. Mariola nests are built within diverse substrates. We can find nests in hollow trees and in natural cavities in rocks and hillsides. It is remarkable that this species also is adapting very well to human environments. We have seen nests in hollow light poles, plastic containers, and a diversity of other cavities that all serve well as nesting bays. As most stingless bees, Mariola has a narrow entrance tube that leads to the inside of the nest. Such a restricting opening protects against robbers interested in brood and stored food. Stingless bees have a rudimentary non-functional sting, but certainly well-developed mandibles. The entrance tube itself is of a delicate construction, resembling loose, finely woven lace. The opening of the tube can be closed when predation pressure is high and under certain conditions at night. Most species of stingless bees have guard bees in their species-specific entrance tunnel. This is also the case in Mariola, but very different from nearly all other stingless bees is that they, in addition, have another unique nest defense force. This consists of a group of workers guarding the nest by fly hoovering in a loose group just in front of the entrance. Any unwanted visitor is attacked by these helicoptering guards. Although being small, these bees are very effective defenders. Together they can bite in the wings of an attacker and keep the even much larger enemy immobilized at the floor for some time. Recent research revealed that these specialized Mariola guards are a little bit larger than workers that carry out other nest tasks. As is visible when we open a nest cavity, storage pots are separate from the brood nest. The brood itself is well protected by a multi-layered system of waxy sheets. This coverage is called the involucrum. Pollen and honey are stored in separate storage pots. These pots are much larger than the brood cells, and in general they are situated more in the periphery of the nest. The construction of storage pots is dynamic. Pots are directly removed when empty, and the building material can be used for new constructions. Also, when new food plants start blooming, new pots can rapidly be built. Here we see two empty, newly built pots together with darker colored pots that are filled with honey and that are sealed. We can see here workers entering a honey pot to either deposit or to extract honey. In addition to nectar and pollen, foragers also collect plant resin from suitable plants and trees. Such foragers use their pollen baskets for transporting this. Collected plant resin, which is called propolis, is stored at specific propolis dumps in the nest. Here we see workers building on the involucrum. All stingless bees, honeybees and bumblebees use beeswax as a building material. Typical for the meliponids is, however, that their wax-producing glands are positioned on the dorsum of the abdomen. They also mix the wax with propolis, and this results in a building material called cerumen. This mixture is used for most nest structures, but the degree of mixing may depend on the nature of the nest structure. Pure propolis is used as a coating for the nest cavity and to fill up cracks. Some other stingless bee species make extensive use of mud to shape the nest entrance or to partition the space for the nest in a hollow tree. The occurrence of waste dumps in the nest is another typical feature of stingless bees. Such special areas that serve for the keeping of all sorts of debris do not occur in honeybee hives. Remains of pupal material from the insides of brood cells that becomes available when hatched cells are removed, and body parts of dead bees are deposited on this dump. Most remarkable is that the waste dump is also frequently used as a latrine. We have seen that in Mariola, worker bees visit the waste dump regularly for defecation. We can see here that deposited fecal excrements remain first as wet threads over the dump surface. The sides of the waste dump are neatly kept by workers, who in a shoveling manner collect small particles and place these on the dump. Other workers take with their mandibles large lumps of dump material and extensively work on such solid chunks. Subsequently, they carry these to the outside, where they are dropped in flight. The complete function of the waste dump is still not fully understood. We hypothesize that the waste dump also may have a microbiological function. Hidden within the protecting involucrum is the real brood nest. Mariola brood cells are arranged in combs, and these combs are, as in most other stingless bees, horizontal single layers of cells. Very typically, each brood cell is used only once, so for each new egg, a new cell is built. In all the parts of the mature combs, we can see that new bees are ready to emerge. They can remain in the cell for some time, with their heads visible when the cell cover has already been removed by other workers. Recently born workers have a whitish color and are called callows. It takes a few days for their skin to harden and to obtain the darker coloration of adult bees. They soon enroll in nest activities, such as cleaning the comb surface. They also interact with the queen in the royal court and in food exchanges with other workers. The behavior of cell building and egg laying can be divided in several phases. In the first phase, new cells are being built. The bottom of a new cell is started as a small platform at the edge of the comb. Starting from the bottom, the cell is now gradually being built up during a period that may last for a few hours. Here, in the front, the cell is approximately 1/3 of its final size. And here, this cell in front is 3/4 of its size. Eventually, the cell is provided with a collar that protrudes above the comb surface. On the cell, at the right, we can see the beginning of this collar. And with this cell, the same situation. The worker is adding building material in order to finish the rim. In the end, we see here 4 completed root cells provided with a collar. Now the cell has reached the stage to receive the larval food and an egg. Queens of Mariola are reared in special cells that are much larger than the regular brood cells. In well-populated colonies, these cells are generally constructed at the edge of a full-grown comb. In some colonies it is possible to find 4 or even more queen cells at the same time. They are always located at some distance from each other, mostly at different combs. Because of the larger cell size, containing more larval food, queens of Mariola emerge much larger than workers. This occurrence of typical queen cells is remarkably different from queen production in stingless bees of the genus Melipona. In that group of stingless bees, workers and queens are produced in the same standard type of brood cell, and consequently, Melipona queens are not larger than workers at the moment of emergence. At that moment, they are even a bit smaller. After having mated, the eggs in the ovaries start to develop, and as a result, only the size of the abdomen increases drastically. Eventually, developed queens of Melipona are just as queens of Mariola, much larger than the workers. During cell building, the queen usually rests on the involucrum or on the older combs. From time to time, she may be surrounded by workers that form a royal court around her. During these periods of relative rest, the queen spends a lot of time auto-grooming. In the presence of workers, she rhythmically spreads her vibrating wings. Such a resting period usually ends when workers vigorously start to interact with her. The queen then starts walking again, and so she may visit a comb where cells are being built. Oral food transfers between workers, trophallaxis, are a common behavior in honeybees and stingless bees. In Mariola, food transfer is initiated by the begging act of one of the participants. This is similar in bees of the genus Melipona, and differently, in the honeybee, food transfers can also be started by workers who spontaneously offer food to another worker or to the queen. As we have also seen in Melipona species, the incidence of trophylactic interactions increases significantly, reaching the completion of a cell building period. We have found that this is a means by which cell provisioners collect enough food to be able to discharge food into the cell. This food is a mixture of pollen, honey, and glandular secretions. At the end of the cell construction phase, there are several cells present with a collar that protrudes from the comb. Periodically, the workers gather around one or more of these cells and behave frantically. They alternately dive into the ready cell, and some workers may freeze above it. Notably, workers that engage in this excitement have extended abdomens, probably filled with larval food. Usually, in Mariola, such periods of excitement are followed by periods of much more quiet behavior. In the final excitement phase, the workers are again clearly hyperactive. And now the queen arrives at the comb. She moves very fast, making many turns and interacting intensively with workers. The queen-worker interactions appear remarkably aggressive. This means that workers dart or jump towards the queen, and she in her turn may walk over workers as if they were not there. Excited workers perform quick body insertions in the ready cells. In this phase, the cells are provisioned with larval food. The cell marked with an arrow is the first cell to be provisioned. This cell is filled with larval food in seconds through 5 to 6 discharges by different workers. These discharges are easily to be seen by the contractions of the abdomen. When the cell is filled with larval food up to 2/3 of its volume, the queen arrives for her final visit. The actual egg laying by the queen is always preceded by the uptake of a little of the larval food. After the queen's laying, the cell will be closed. The fact that the whole amount of larval food for complete larval development is brought into the cell in a very short moment is characteristic for all stingless bees. Typically for Mariola is that the queen does not have to remain by the cell during this provisioning, as is the case in Melipona species. Therefore, it is possible that two different cells are being provisioned more or less simultaneously. In this footage, the first discharges take place in the cell on top, but the cell on the left will also be filled. The duration of the cell closure can be very short since the cells were already provided of a collar. This collar can be immediately folded inwards when the queen withdraws after laying. The first part of the closure is done in a rotating movement by a single worker, who persistently remains at this cell until it is nearly closed. From this moment, other workers may join in the completion of the cell closure. As mentioned, usually the queen of Mariola does not stay firmly near the cell during the whole provisioning process. Cells that have obtained the appropriate amount of larval food may be surrounded by a group of workers, and now, while the queen keeps on cruising excitingly on the combs, a worker may lay an egg. This worker egg is quickly placed at the inner rim of the cell, where it is not in touch with the larval food. Such worker eggs are called trophic eggs, since the queen eats this worker egg as soon as she returns to this cell. Directly after that, she lays her own egg on the surface of the larval food. In all cases, the queen will eat something prior to her own oviposition. Since laying workers only lay eggs in a few cells, the food uptake by the queen consists mostly of larval food that the workers have deposited in the cell. Since stingless bees store pollen and honey in long-living nests, they have been used and even been domesticated by various human cultures. Here we see an Indian woman of the indigenous Bribri tribe in southeast Costa Rica, inspecting her Mariola colony that is kept in a calabash in her kitchen. Before the European honeybees were introduced, honey production in the Americas was only possible with stingless bees. Particularly in the old Maya region, there was a developed beekeeping practice with meliponids. One colony of a large-sized Melipona beechii could produce here and in other Central American areas up to several liters of honey. Such traditional melipona culture still exists, but it is now mostly a rural activity, and unfortunately it is in danger of extinction due to several ecological limitations. Other species of stingless bees are still being kept in tropical America and also in other continents. Our small Tetragonisca angustula is also kept in a wide area of its distribution. And this is why the Mariola from Costa Rica has in neighboring countries different names like Mariquita, Doncella, Chumelo, Virginitas, Angelitas, Yatai, etc. Mariola colonies kept in boxes, hollow bamboo tubes, or even soft drink bottles produce just a teacup full of honey. However, this fine tasting honey is highly valued. In some places, a Mariola colony is considered a living medicine box. This honey is used for various health problems. For example, it is commonly recommended as a treatment for eye diseases. In this film, we have seen that this tiny bee is interesting because of its elaborate and remarkable behavior. Within the large group of about 20,000 species of bees in the world, such level of sociality occurs exclusively in the stingless bees, Meliponinae, and in the honeybees, Apinae. Only there we can see complex colonies with workers and queens with specific behavior as well as with different morphology. Tetragonisca angustula is a good representative of the stingless bee group. To appreciate the beauty of this kind of sociality further, we can, as a conclusion, compare our small Mariola with the much better known honeybee. Mariola queens are already huge at hatching. As in all stingless bees, Mariola has a narrow nest opening. Combs of stingless bees are singly layered. Mariola queens eat larval food and worker eggs. Worker-queen interactions in Mariola are seemingly aggressive. In stingless bees, all larval food is brought into the cell just before egg laying. Huge queen cells are regularly present in Mariola, and not only when swarming is going on. Mariola queens lay eggs only in cells that are filled with larval food. Mariola workers deposit trophic eggs at the inner rim of a provisioned brood cell.